Hello everyone, I'm Sir JC and you are watching Research Made Easy. In today's video, we are about to discuss the scope and the limitation. With that, let's define the scope of the study first. It is the part of the study where you explain the extent of your research. It is also where the variables to be used in research are determined. Scope of the study details what your study will explore. Sa scope of the study, i-highlight yung mga sakop o yung mga involved sa study mo. For example, sakop mo ba ang buong school? Or may specific group ka lang na ibibilang? Kasali ba ang lahat ng macro skills sa research mo? O may pinili ka lang na isang skill among them? You have to specify kung sino at ano ang mga kasali sa study mo. Because scope of the study provides the coverage or the parameter within which the study will be conducted. Ngayon, pag-usapan naman natin ang differences ng delimitation and limitation because these two words are not interchangeable. Let's start with the delimitations. Delimitations are choices made by the researcher which should be mentioned. It describes the boundaries that you have set for the study. Kung ang scope is about the variables, aspects, and categories that you will include sa study, the limitation, on the other hand, decides what to exclude in your study. Bakit kailangang mag-set ng boundaries or delimitation ang mismong researcher? It helps to narrow down the scope of the study, to make it more manageable and relevant sa research goal natin. And these boundaries that we have set or we have made must be mentioned sa ating research paper. Sa umpisa pa lang, sineset na ang delimitation ng researcher para maging maliwanag ang conduct ng research. Since ine-explain nito ang hangganan ng sakop ng research study. Whereas ang limitations naman are conditions or influences that cannot be controlled by the researcher that place restrictions on your methodology and conclusions. We can say that limitations are potential weaknesses of the study which are beyond the control of the researcher. With this, the characteristics of design or methodology impacted or influenced the interpretation of the findings from your research. Ito ang mga constraints or restrictions na naka-impact sa study noong ginagawa mo pa lang. However, hindi sila maiiwasan dahil beyond na siya sa kakayahan mo. Ito ay mga hindi inaasahang scenario or aspects pero nangyari pa din or nag-occur pa din. With that, limitations are potential weaknesses or restrictions occurred beyond the control of the researcher. On the other hand, the limitations are boundaries set personally by the researcher to narrow down the scope or the coverage of the study. Going back sa parts ng Chapter 1, ang focus natin dito sa lesson na ito ay ang scope and the limitation. If we will try to assess it, ang scope and the limitation para siyang disclaimer. You inform the readers through scope and the limitation your coverage and boundaries. Dito sa scope and delimitation, mailalagay ninyo ang mga sakop at ang mga hindi nasaklaw ng inyong research study. Dito ninyo masasabi ang mga specific characteristics, aspects, or fixed limits ng inyong research. Moving on to the elements of scope and delimitation of the study. Ano nga ba ang contents ng scope and delimitation? First, main or major variables of the study. Mention the variables, pati na din ang purpose ng research. 2. Participants of the study. We have to mention the participants or respondents at kung ilan sila. You may also include the sampling method used. 3. Coverage date of the study. We have to mention the time period or range. 4. Research locale. We have to mention the setting of the study or where the study will be conducted. And lastly, number 5, research instrument and method to be used. We have to mention the tools and design na gagamitin sa collection of data. Now, let's proceed to the guidelines in drafting the scope and delimitation. First, we have to explain the main or major variables in the first paragraph. Sa part na ito, we have to mention the variables at i-anchor na din natin yung objective and purpose ng ating research. Ilalagay lahat ito sa first paragraph ng ating scope and delimitation. In the second paragraph, we have to introduce the participants, the limitations, and indicators or sub-variables under study. We have to include as well the data to be used. Sa second paragraph, we have to include sino at ilan ang ating participants or respondents. We can now set the boundaries sa part na ito, specifically about sa ating mga variables, para mas maging narrow ang coverage natin. Lastly, in our last paragraph, we have to state the delimitations regarding the coverage date, research locale, and the research instrument and method to be used to gather data. So for better understanding of our lesson, let's have an example. I have here my research titled The Development of Supplementary E-Learning Guide for Senior High School Reading and Writing Subject. For its scope and delimitation, sa unang paragraph, it is a simple sentence only about the variables and the end goal ng research. Sa pangalawang paragraph, I mentioned the participants, ang bilang nila, at ang mga sinet ko na boundaries, such as focus lang ang research na ito sa dalawang macro skills, namely reading and writing skills. Wala na ding ibang macro skills na kasali pa. Moreover, reading and writing subject lang din ang kasali na subject at wala ng ibang English subjects na isasama pa sa analysis. For the last paragraph, I mentioned the range of the school year at ang setting ay dinescribe ko naman na isang private school sa Plaridel, Bulacan. Para naman sa ating methods, gumamit ako ng ADDIE model at inilagay ko ang tools to collect data such as interview, observation checklist, and standardized questionnaires. And there you have it. That's how you will write your scope and delimitation. I hope you learned a lot. See you in our next video.